Show number 3. Hey, look at me. Still employed, gainfully. How about you? We're past show 2. You still listening like you do? I am Mischke. Turn on the processor panel, talkback compressor, the KVM extender, flip on the audio router, cue the network patch, punch up the block, switch the audio modulator, the sequencer. We're ready to roll here. Hey, is the server satellite set? Put it on the hybrid RDS encoder. There you go. That's connected. Attaboy. Can you hear me out there? The multi-pair cables are tangled. I don't like this. Shift them to the right. There you go. And the coffee maker is busted. I'm having to drink rancid Earl Grey tea from last week out of a discarded pencil holder. Who's in charge of that? You know, when I was a boy, Joe Dimaggio used to advertise Mr. Coffee machines. And it is the machine I still prefer today. Simple automatic drip. Joe knew what he was talking about back then. Simon and Garfunkel asked, "Where have you gone, Joe Dimaggio? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you." "Well, what's that you say, Mrs. Robinson? Joe's on the TV set? Making a living selling automatic drip coffee makers?" I looked at Joe on the TV set as a boy, and I said, "Jojo, one day I'm going to be doing what you're doing, endorsing products in a broadcast medium." But there will be one big difference, fella. I won't, at that point, be looking back and remembering a far different career, one filled with a lot more glory and adulation. That must have been hard, Joe, going from the Yankees to pitching Mr. Coffee. See, my first days in radio, in my 20s, I was already being asked to pitch a business to the masses. Right away when I got into radio, they came up to me and said something along the lines of, "You got to do a commercial. I mean, we're trying to make money here. Can you endorse this?" What's endorse mean? What are we doing here? What's that you got? Pannekuchenhoos? My very first ad, the Pannekuchenhoos. I didn't even know what a Pannekuchenhoos was. I think my very first live endorsement, I mistakenly called it a women's sauna or something. Turns out it's a restaurant. I was pulled off that account immediately. I had not yet learned that you have to truly care about a business before you can talk about it. I had not learned that lesson yet. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that lesson has been learned by a lot of people out there pitching different products in this world. You got to really care. You really do. If you don't care. I mean, Joe cared about the Mr. Coffee Maker, I think. I felt it. I like to imagine that there actually is a Mr. Coffee. I picture him looking like Joe. Cardigan, sweater, nice warm smile. I like to think when I'm sleeping, he's working like Santa Claus. Getting my coffee ready. Waiting in the kitchen when I get up in the morning. Then I go down there and I find he's wearing my wife's undergarments and I have to chase him out the door. But that's all right. He left the coffee behind. And I can drink it without having Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days playing in my head. And Joe, you couldn't do that, could you? Now, I know that Bruce hadn't written that song yet, but you still heard a version of it playing in your head, didn't you, Joe? You were pitching Mr. Coffee and no one was cheering. There was just a check in the mail at the end of the week, but that check was never the thing, was it, Joe? That's not what you lived for. That's not what it was about. It was about the adulation. It was about the glory. Golly, you hate to live a life where you're loved most and loved best when you're real young. When it's suddenly over all too soon, what do? Joe found Mr. Coffee. Brett Favre is pitching CBD products. How's the happiness level? Is it inching anywhere near those days on the field? But it's tough to feel sorry for Joe Dimaggio. Because right when he wrapped up his baseball career with the Yanks, he went right into dating Marilyn Monroe. Talk about moving from one glory into another glory. Long before there was Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, there was Dimaggio and Marilyn. As an ESPN announcer once said years ago, what American male wouldn't sell his soul to the devil to duplicate the feat of Jolt and Joe, playing center field for the Yanks and marrying, at the time, the sexiest woman on the planet? But there's something cattywampus in that story. Joe went, about 13 years as a major leaguer? Aren't you supposed to go even longer in a marriage? He only made it 9 months with Marilyn. 9 months. A lot of guys are just coming back from the honeymoon at that point. 9 months. What happened, Joe? Mischke turns his curious eyes to you. Woo, 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 woo. Joe wanted Marilyn to be a 1950s-style wife. That's what happened. Joe wanted Marilyn staying at home, quitting her acting career. He was controlling and he was demanding. And she was a wildly independent woman, and she filed for divorce citing mental cruelty, quote unquote. Mental cruelty. Say it ain't so, Joe. But old Mr. Coffee, he loved her. Joe loved her. He had fresh roses delivered to Marilyn Monroe's grave 3 times a week for 20 years after she died. I always thought Joe should have brought Marilyn's memory into the whole Mr. Coffee commercial, playing off her movie Some Like It Hot. Do you know what Joe Dimaggio's last words were on his deathbed? You're thinking I'm making this up. I am not. Look it up. Joe Dimaggio's last words on his deathbed, I kid you not. Now I get to see Marilyn. That's a fact. Those were his words. Now I get to see Marilyn. Of course, when he got to heaven, she was with Bob and Jack Kennedy, and they told him 4's a crowd, pal, sorry. So Joe ended up wandering the back hallways in heaven, alone, despondent, finding Babe Ruth in some back closet with a couple of recently deceased floozies from the Bronx. He asked the Babe if he would share, and Babe, of course, being a gregarious, good-natured guy, he gave Joe one of the floozies, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't Marilyn. I was thinking about Joe's last words today. I was thinking about it because I was thinking about last words in general. I went looking up people's last words. Not sure why. Mozart, his last words were, "I feel something that is not of this earth." I love that. He was in the in-between there, I think. Just heading out and just starting to feel something that wasn't earth, and then boom, gone. I like that, though. I feel something that is not of this earth. That's kind of like Steve Jobs' last words. You know what his were? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. He was seeing something, too. Now, Humphrey Bogart, he just said, "I should have never switched from scotch to martinis." Marie Antoinette, her last words, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." What? "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Unusual last words. But what had happened was she had stepped on her executioner's foot when climbing up to the guillotine. Very polite woman. "Pardon me, sir, I did not do that on purpose." Marie Antoinette, Queen of France. How come we never hear anybody say the last words were, "Ah!" How come we don't hear that? How come we never hear the last words were, "Ah! Ah!" Just give me, this sucks. Somebody had to say that. Winston Churchill's last words were, "I'm bored with it all," which is why I argue people should not live into their 90s. I think late 80s, if you can make it, should be enough. You've had a good run. and really should be ready to go. Churchill, who was interested in so many different things in life, painting and writing, fiction, nonfiction, history, more different things than almost anyone I've ever read about, and he was bored with it all in his 90s, his last words. And if you think he was a freak or a fluke, a Churchill-like guy, William F. Buckley Jr., in his early 80s was already tired of living. He didn't have any serious affliction. He wasn't dealing with any major health issues, but he was tired of living. Listen to him on Charlie Rose in his last year or two before he died, just talking about life.
Do you wish you were 20?
No. Absolutely not. If I had a pill which would reduce my age by 25 years, I wouldn't take it.
Why not?
Because I'm tired of life.
Are you really?
Yeah. I really am. I'm utterly prepared to stop living on.
So those people out there trying to make us all live to 120, 100, I don't know. Maybe the 80s is about where you just say to yourself, I've done a lot. It's been quite a ride. Or as Augustus McCrae said as he closed his eyes in Lonesome Dove, my Lord, it's been quite a party. Well, the party's over, I think, at that point. Turn out the lights. Back with The Secret Life of Secrets. After this. I'm standing at the intersection of 34th Avenue South and 29th Street, and it is ugly. 2-car accident. Guy in the Toyota Camry there didn't stop for the stop sign, and the lady in the Volvo is hurt. She's going to be fine, ultimately, but not just because she's going to live and be out of the hospital in a couple of days, but because Brad, Shaw, and Brian is going to help her with a nice little compensation package that old Mr. Camry is going to have to cough up. There's no one, when it comes to personal injury attorneys who can compete with the shrewd insight, the fiery determination, and the deep understanding of the law of Brad, Shaw, and Bryant. The only law firm associated with this show, and the one I've been doing ads for over a decade. They seek justice for the injured. Learn all about them at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. Michael Slepian is a professor at Columbia University. He's a recipient of the Rising Star Award from the Association for Psychological Science. He's the leading expert in the world on the psychology of secrets. Michael Slepian's new book, The Secret Life of Secrets. I welcome him to the show. Everybody listening right now, everybody listening to this podcast has secrets. I think it's fair to say, based on reading your book, that everybody out there right now is carrying secrets. It would be virtually impossible, I think you'd agree, to find anyone who isn't, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we're talking about a wide variety of what you're defining as a secret. Some of them could be relatively banal.
Yeah.
But they would all have one thing in common. They would all be something the person out there, or you or me, is keeping from someone else. It has to be intentionally being kept from someone.
That's right. Intentionally withheld from one or more people.
And when you say intentionally withheld from one or more people, you don't automatically mean that one or more people who have the right to hear that secret.
When I define secrecy, I define it as the intention to keep information from one or more people. So you can have that intention if no one has ever asked you about that secret, You can have that intention whether or not you think that person would expect access to that secret.
Sometimes I think people assume built into the term secret is the idea that it's something you shouldn't be holding, that in a perfect world you would let it out, but you're afraid to, nervous to, scared to, uncomfortable about. But am I, when I say that, only talking about a certain category of secrets?
No, when we look at secrets, and it was important to look at all secrets. So that can include something that maybe you should reveal to someone, and that could include something that it would actually do more harm than good to reveal.
It's, I believe you report, one of the least understood, or was one of the least understood parts of the psyche. And I don't know why that would have been the case. People steered clear of studying secrets, or they didn't know how to. Which?
So it's the second one. I'm a social psychologist by training, and the gold standard for social psychologists is an experiment. We manipulate something and look at the effects of that. My colleagues are not just obsessed with experiments, they're obsessed with artificially creating this situation entirely from scratch in the laboratory. And that's where they went wrong. People keep secrets on average for 5 to 9 years. You can't create that in the laboratory. And so by trying to create that in the laboratory, the folks who came before me weren't studying the real thing.
People keep secrets for 5 to 9 years. Is the idea there that there just comes a point between 5 and 9 years when they can't deal with it anymore, when they can't hold it anymore, when it just becomes too much?
That could be one reason why people just can't handle the burden any longer, and they reveal this thing that they've been keeping from their partner or from their family for years. Another thing that can happen is people just say, you know what? This is not a big deal anymore. And that could be another reason.
My listeners out there are carrying, on average, 13 secrets each, probably a lot more. And the reason I say probably a lot more is because in your research, you have found that on average, people have 13 different categories where their secrets fit. What you didn't determine necessarily is how many secrets could be in each of those categories, but there's at least one secret in 13 different categories that people out there are carrying with them every day.
That's right. And so where that number comes from, when we first started this research, the most basic questions had not even been asked yet. Questions like, what secrets do people keep? How many secrets do people keep? And so to get us started, we asked a couple thousand people, what's a secret you're keeping? And we looked at those couple thousand responses and arrived at a set of categories that really comprehensively covered what people described in their responses. And we found these 38 categories of secrets really do a good job of covering the secrets people keep. When we ask people open-ended, what's the secret you're keeping? 92% of the time, what they describe fits on this list. On average, people are keeping 13 secrets from that list of 38 categories of secrets.
For people who are wondering about these 38 categories, I won't list them all, but you can certainly imagine what some of them are. Hurting another person emotionally or physically, family secrets, illegal drug use, a habit and addiction, theft, physical self-harm, an abortion in your past, some other experience that was traumatic for you, a lie, a violation of someone's trust, romantic desire, romantic discontent, sexual infidelity, social discontent, unhappy with a friend, physical discontent, like your appearance. There are 38 categories, and 13 of those categories, you will find one or more secret being held by all the people listening right now, me, my guest, Michael. What I most understood when you wanted to study this, what I most understood was the notion of it as a weight. Just the language, and you write about this in your book, just the language around secrets, the way they weigh on people. They're carrying a secret. And of course, we don't know where this secret is they're carrying. There is no place in the brain you can find the secret compartment, right?
Right.
But people feel like it's something weighing them down. You even did a wonderful test involving tasks that people who are thinking about a secret look at versus those who don't, and how much harder that task is for someone who's thinking about their secret because they're already burdened, they're already stressed, they're already tired from the weight of it.
Yeah, so these were the very first studies I ran on secrecy, and these were the studies that would later, lead to this insight that we've been studying secrecy all wrong. People will describe being weighed down by a secret. We can be burdened by a secret. And so my first studies would have people think about a significant secret and then have another group of participants think about a small secret or a trivial secret. And then what we had them do while they were thinking about their secret was make a series of judgments that we know do correspond with the experience of physical burden. So if you're carrying something heavy, if you're out of shape, if you're tired, the world around you will look more challenging to interact with because it is. If you're carrying something really heavy, if you're really fatigued, you'll judge a distance as farther and a hill as steeper because for you, it is. It's going to require more effort for you to scale that hill or walk that distance. And it turned out when participants were thinking about big secrets, they showed those same kind of effects. They judged hills as steeper, they judged distances as farther, they judged physical tasks as requiring more effort, as if their resources were compromised in that moment when thinking about the secret.
I think it's fair to say that the best thing about your book in terms of the help it can offer people is that, first of all, it presents the idea that carrying around certain secrets is unhealthy and it takes a toll, not just on mental health, on physical health. And one of the things I took from your book, among many, was someone should hear our secrets. Somebody. Doesn't mean you got to tell the person that it's going to hurt if they were to learn it. It doesn't mean that you got to tell the world. But someone should hear that secret if you want to live healthier and if you want that weight, that burden to lessen. Now, it's tricky finding who the person is to tell this secret to, but someone should know, which would make it, at least in that moment, no longer a secret, at least not one you're holding by yourself.
When we think of secrecy, we think of that most awkward moment where someone asks us a question related to the secret and we dodge the question or we say something untrue. That actually doesn't happen very often. People don't go around asking people if they've ever cheated on someone or if they've ever had an abortion, for example. These are not questions that people typically go around asking, so we're not often fielding these questions. But what happens quite frequently is we have the secret in our own head and we revisit that secret in our own head time and time again. And that's where the burden comes from, having to live with the secret in your own head alone. And when we choose to be alone with something, we don't develop healthy ways of thinking about it. And that's why it becomes so crucial in order to cope better with a secret to talk about it with another person. And as you mentioned, it doesn't have to be the person you're keeping it from. Sometimes that's the right choice, but always a better choice to begin is talking about it with a third party. And you might discuss that secret with a third party and maybe it's not a secret from them anymore, but it still could be a secret from other people. What you get when talking about it with another person is you get another perspective, emotional support, practical support, validation, sympathy. These are just things you can't get on your own, but are very easy for another person to provide to you.
Now, someone might say, well, I don't need any of that. And I think what you would say is, you may not know you need it, but we have found in our studies that that weight you're carrying that secret, is doing damage, is taking a toll. And again, the research shows not just on your mental health, on your physical health. And something about talking to even one other person lessens that weight that is doing the damage, right? Somehow, some way, that gets lessened.
Yeah, when we choose to be alone with something, we just don't develop healthy ways of thinking about it. We're more likely to feel ashamed of that thing. We're more likely to feel isolated with it. We're more likely to feel inauthentic for keeping it. And those negative feelings are tempered when we discuss it with another person. And, it's important to point out that Some people are better confidants than others. One reason why the average experience of confiding a secret in a third party goes really well is probably people also choose their confidants carefully.
And this is interesting to me. You say in the book, if it's an immoral act, if it's some act having to do with morality, you have to share it with someone if you want the relief we're talking about here. You have to share it with someone who more or less shares your moral outlook.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about who can I reveal the secret to, you're thinking, I'm struggling a little bit with this thing, or I find myself ruminating on it. Even if you feel like you aren't struggling with it, if you find your mind returning to it time and time again, to me, that is a sign that there is a healthier way forward. Rumination is very harmful for our health. And so when you're choosing who to reveal a secret to, you want to be thinking about, well, what happens the moment after you reveal it? You want to choose someone who's going to be able to help you with it and be non-judgmental, because, one of the primary dimensions of our secrets are how immoral we perceive the secrets to be. And so here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to reveal a secret to someone that is just going to absolutely scandalize them. You don't want to pick someone who's going to find what you did to be completely morally objectionable, because then what the risk then becomes is we reveal the secret to someone who finds what we did far more immoral than what we think about, how we think about it ourselves. So pick someone who will see the issue in a similar way. Don't pick someone who's going to be totally scandalized by what you've told them.
The Secret Life of Secrets is the name of the book. Michael Slepian is the author, a psychologist who wanted to research secrets, an area that had been poorly studied, if studied at all. And what's utterly fascinating is you decide to study this before finding out you are part of a pretty extraordinary secret story yourself. I think you were about a year into your efforts when your father revealed a secret to you over the phone.
Yes, I had been studying secrecy for a year about that time, and I'm actually on this very big interview for the job I have now. The way these interviews work is you spend all day in meetings and you're being interviewed all day long. You spend an hour or more presenting your research, and they grill you on your research, and I'm talking about secrets. The whole day is about my research on secrets. And at the end of this very long day, after midnight even, I'm getting a call from my dad, and so I finally call him back after the end of this very long day, well past 12 hours at this point. And I call him back and I say, "Hi, I saw you called. What's going on?" And he said, "Michael, you should sit down for this. I have something to tell you." And then he tells me that he's not my biological father. He's not able to have children. He's telling me that I'm donor conceived. Before I can even ask my first question, he says, "And so is my brother, and it's a different donor." It was completely shocking. There's no way you can be ready for that kind of revelation.
And as we learn reading your book, it was only kept from you two.
Yeah.
They were fine telling anybody else, but not the two kids.
There's so many interesting aspects of this story that intersect with the research. So here's an example. This is a secret that they can talk about with almost anyone, and they do. A lot of people knew. Only two people didn't, my younger brother and I, and their plan was to never tell us. This is what they agreed to. We are never going to tell the children about this. And, my dad, he considered it just as some medical detail. And, you don't tell your children all your medical details. And I certainly understand that. And I think there's an interesting component to when these decisions are being made. They decided this in the 80s. And it wasn't a thing yet in the 80s? Genetic testing for $100.
Right.
And so it didn't seem unreasonable at the time. I think parents probably think about it very differently today, because these are secrets people can find out by accident. And I know more than one person who has learned this very secret by accident. And so what my parents were able to do was get out ahead of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're hearing something like this and you're thinking, do I have a secret that somehow someone I care about could learn from some other means than me telling them? To me, that's a sign that you might want to get out in front of it and at least be the one who reveals it.
Again, all of us, you listening, me, We all have secrets. We're all carrying secrets. It's almost impossible not to have them. And this book makes you think about your own secrets. Your dad's plan was to go all of your life without you ever having this revealed. Do you think, had he never told you, that would have been okay?
I think he did the right thing to tell me. And I think the reason for that, this could have been learned by accident. I think that's the worst case scenario here.
That's an interesting reason, though. You're not saying it's, I have a right to know, damn it.
It seems like it. But, there's reasons why I think, I could have the right to know. Medical issues, right? And so it gets tricky quickly when we think about, well, what if this secret could really damage someone? And so, I think the classic example is someone has cheated on their partner and they're thinking they should tell them. Does that person have the right to know? Probably. But would they want to know? That's another question.
I'm glad you brought this up. You mention in the book that the relationship advice columnist Dan Savage actually recommends that if there's infidelity in a marriage, and it's one time, not going to happen again, one mistake, one drunken night, one stupid thing, and you're burdened and wanting to tell your spouse because you feel guilty, he advises, don't tell him. If this was a one-off, if this is never going to happen again, you carry the burden. You live with it. You don't put it on someone else and give them the pain. Now, you challenge that in the book, and I want to address this because you, I think, surveyed people on whether or not they would want to know or not know.
Yep.
And I think you had a figure like percentage like 23% only said they wouldn't want to know, and the rest would want to know.
Yeah.
Here's my problem with that survey. You can't unknow it once you know it. So you're asking people to imagine knowing it.
Yes.
And then saying, would you rather not know it?
Yep.
I don't think you can say to someone, imagine that your husband or wife had an affair. Now, would you want to know that? Well, you know it already. So, of course, you want to know it. I'm surprised it was only 23%. The question that people have to ask themselves with a secret is life going to be better if I tell it? Or people have to ask themselves with a secret, does it not matter one way or the other? This is about one's moral responsibility.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of secrets that could do damage. And the truth is often something that shouldn't be avoided. So it's a conundrum.
Yeah, and so this is a really big one, and it's a really common one. And so I think it is worth unpacking it. And I agree with what you're saying. The contrast from was this a one-time thing is this is a repeat offense. And I don't think you'll find a single psychologist who will say, if you've done this multiple times and this is a repeat problem, that it's okay to keep that secret.
Right.
And
right.
so, there's a starting point. If you're doing this again and again, that's a problem, and keeping it a secret is not okay. But things get tricky if it's a one-time thing. The Dan Savage advice, I think, makes sense within the context of that contrast. If it's a one-time thing, well, that's certainly less bad. And so maybe now we're not in the situation where you just absolutely have to tell anymore. And so then I think the other thing to consider, and this is where I challenge this advice to your point, is there's another person in this story. And that's the person who is being kept in the dark. And infidelity is their number one deal breaker. Infidelity is the number one cause for the dissolution of a relationship and divorce. And so it's a big deal, right? And so, in a perfect world, you would have some idea of would they want to know. And so if you could have a sense, at least we're in a better starting position. I don't think we should ignore this question of whether they would want to know. Now, can you know whether you would want to know?
But here's what's interesting. If you don't tell it, according to your research, this person will carry the guilt, carry the weight. It'll take a mental toll, It'll take a physical toll. He'll be a less happy, less healthy person. I mean, it's a rough go either way.
Yeah, and so this is why it is always such a good idea for any big secret that you are considering revealing to the person you're keeping it from. I think there's so much to be gained by not starting there, by starting with another person, a third party. This is such a big decision. Find another person to talk about it with, and you're going to have to pick your person very carefully.
Here's something that says a lot from your book. We may not want our secrets to be known, but we want ourselves to be known. And there's a tension there. Because how do you become known if you're hiding? And you write, one of the core reasons secrets are so difficult to keep is that secrecy itself goes against our very human impulse to share the human experience with others. We want to be known. We want to talk about our lives, our experiences. Well, carrying those secrets just goes so against that. And yet, once again, we're all doing it. We're all walking around with our secrets, at least 13 apiece, probably much more than that, in one of these 38 categories I was mentioning earlier: having hurt someone, illegal drug use or addiction, theft, physical self-harm, abortion, a traumatic experience, a lie, romantic desire, romantic discontent. The most common one, according to your research, extra-relational thoughts. So you haven't been unfaithful, but at that party you're looking over at Jane there and not your wife Denise, and Jane's looking pretty good, and your thoughts are going off in what we might call Jimmy Carter country. I remember him saying when he was running for president, talked about how often he lusted in his heart. That's interesting as a secret. Could be about 40 secrets per person there. I don't know.
Just a slight asterisk. This is the most common secret people keep that they don't tell anyone about.
Okay.
We don't talk about it. We don't tell other people that we have this experience, even though everyone knows it's very common. There's really fascinating things about this one. It's just a thought, but even just having a thought can feel like a secret.
Well, this ties into something I thought of right away. I was looking at a site where people could leave their secrets anonymously, and I was reading some of the secrets, and there was one that kind of fit into the category of, well, it's just a thought. Is this really that bad? But this woman thought it was. She said, if my house were on fire, I'm almost 100% certain I would rescue my dog before my husband. And I live with this. This secret haunts her. She included it, trying to unburden herself of it. She included it in some offering where people could leave their anonymous secrets. And she's struggling with the fact that she wants that dog out, who maybe only has 3 years to live, but her 35-year-old husband can cook. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
May speak to some other problems. Or it's just a great dog. Could be just a wonderful dog.
Once you have that thought, you can't unthink it, right? And so you could have that thought and think, oh God, why am I having this thought? What does it mean? And then you don't have an answer to that question. And now you're stuck on the question. And now you're thinking about this thought even more. It can be easy to get stuck on a thought when we don't understand it. And now we're thinking about this thought again and again, and we're not sharing it with people. And now it's like any other secret where it's this thing in our head and we can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, your description of rumination in your book, which I've always known is an enemy to watch out for in life, those cycling thoughts that move in your head and repeat, and you just kind of get locked into them, and you can just kind of spiral down. But I loved your description of rumination, and obviously there are a lot of people who ruminate about their secrets. Rumination contributes to the onset of disorders like depression and anxiety because rumination acts as a magnifying glass for currently felt negative emotions. And that idea of taking a magnifying glass to the negative part of your thinking. You don't know that the escape is just waiting there by getting outside yourself, by emptying this onto someone else. On average, people return to their secrets 3 times a week. But when you ask people to report on their most significant secrets, the ones they felt most strongly about, they reported thinking about that secret on average 20 times a week, 4 times as often. Now, a big secret being thought of 20 times a week is doing some damage. I mean, you can feel that almost intuitively. I don't trust necessarily intuition all by itself. I'm glad these things are studied, but it shouldn't come as a shock, both physical and mental damage being done.
Yeah, and we've done follow-up research, and it turns out for our most important or most significant secret, it's even more than that. It's thinking about it multiple times every few hours.
Man, tell me about the secrets of the lawyers in Illinois.
Yeah, fascinating story of these 2 lawyers who were in this very unusual position to know that there was someone who was in jail for murder, and they knew for a fact that this person was innocent because they were representing a different person who admitted to the murder. This person would not give them permission to reveal this secret until after his death. And so they knew for 26 years that there was someone sitting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. I mean, it's so hard to imagine what it was like to live with this burden. And what's so interesting about this particular case is this is something they could talk about with other people, and they did. And so they didn't have to hide the secret, but they had to think about it all the time.
Wait a minute. What do you mean they could tell other people? I thought it was attorney-client privilege.
Sure. They couldn't reveal names, but they could tell a fellow lawyer about the situation.
They could say, there's this guy, can't tell you who, he's in prison for a murder, he didn't commit the murder.
Yeah.
And there's this other guy we know who did commit the murder.
Right.
I'll tell you, when I read that, so many thoughts went through my head. First, I thought, is that really the way it's supposed to work? Is that really what attorney-client privilege is all about? You are just supposed to sit with that? You can't go to a judge and say, I know that guy's innocent.
So the reason why they will claim, and only one of them is still alive today, but the reason why they will say that this was their only option, it was their duty to protect their client. And so, you and I can disagree, and I think it's easy to, but this is what their interpretation of what they were supposed to do. And so they did, in their mind, the only thing that they could do, which was, write a signed affidavit and put it in a safe. And then the moment that their client passed away, they took it out, and this guy got out of jail after 26 years.
Did they ever go tell the guy? Did they say, guess what? We sat with for 26 years. They told him.
Yeah.
And did the guy hit him?
No, he wrote a book about it. The guy who got out of jail. I believe the title is Justice Failed, and he tells the whole story.
You say one of the attorneys is dead?
Yes, I believe he recently passed away. Yeah.
I find myself wondering if he had revealed the secret, if he might still be alive. Who knows what physical damage was being done year in and year out holding that secret. There's another powerful secret in your book. The woman who kept it, I believe, 52 years from when she was 15 years old?
Yeah.
This was a woman who, obviously, at way too young of age, had a child. She's 15 years old. She has a newborn. She's in a house where people are deathly sick, where people are trying to sleep, where family members are getting endlessly annoyed by this colicky baby crying every night, all night, keeping them up. It's causing more and more problems. This poor 15-year-old girl one night puts a cushion over the baby's face, not even intending for the baby to die, but that is exactly what happened. And the story she told was she accidentally rolled over on the baby while sleeping. That was what the officials went with. Apparently the coroner looked at things and said that would kind of make sense with the suffocation. And she went decades. In fact, she became an older woman before one day she went to the cops.
She's keeping this secret for 52 years. And, as she tells the story, yeah, she wasn't trying to kill the baby or anything. It was crying and crying and crying. And she thought if she could just cover its mouth for a moment, maybe the crying would stop. When she saw what she did, she was horrified, and eventually police are on the scene, and she gets away with it, and that the cause of death is ruled as an accident. It's not the end of the story, though, because she has this secret for 52 years. And one day, 52 years later, there happens to be a police officer at her door for another reason. And she just breaks down and confesses. And, in interviews about it, she says the reason she confessed is she couldn't take the burden any longer. She couldn't hold it back anymore.
There seems to be a cumulative effect, an increasing sense of, I can only carry this so much longer before it will be too much. The weight will crush me.
Yeah. Nobody is going around asking her about this 52 years later. The story wasn't that it was this difficulty of dodging questions or anything like that. Actually, it was worse for nobody to ever find out. It was worse to be entirely alone with this thing. And she revealed this secret that could have put her in jail. She put herself at great risk just to get this thing off her chest. And I think that just goes to show you how hard it is to be completely alone with something so big.
Judge said, "You have felt guilt every day of your life for the past 52 years, and I accept in your case there is real lifelong guilt. You wanted to bring yourself to justice. That's what you've done. You were 15. You were a schoolgirl. You were a child. And you've lived your youth and all your adult life in the shadow of these offenses. The punishment inflicted will be lifelong until the day you die, and nothing I do will alter that." So he did not send her to prison. She got a 2-year suspended prison sentence. 52 years she carried that. The conclusion seemed to be that carrying secrets completely on your own, not good. That just carrying it all by yourself doesn't mean you have to tell the people you're keeping it from, but somebody should know. And somehow in that knowing, you're going to unburden yourself in a way that's going to help your life in physical and psychological ways. We're only now, very late in the game, learning about that damage.
As isolating as it can feel to have a secret, we're not alone. We all keep them, and we all keep the same kinds of secrets. And once we start talking about them, we realize that we're not alone.
The Secret Life of Secrets. It's a great title. These secrets do have a secret life. Like shadows, as you write, they follow us around. Excellent work. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for having me.
You people have any secrets? Maybe you can text me or email me your secrets. Feel free to do it anonymously. I just really want to know all of them. According to the research, each of you has on average 13 secrets. You can just tell me one. You can text me at 651-321-8949. 651-321-8949. Damon?
This is.
Mischke here. What's going on in your life? Do you have any secrets at all you want to get off your chest?
No secrets. I'm an open book.
They say everyone has at least 13.
Really?
Yeah, everyone has at least 13 secrets, probably more. So you've got them. You're just uncomfortable revealing them to me.
Okay.
I'd sure like to try guessing at what they are. My sense is you'd be the kind of guy who might look at a woman at a party and imagine yourself with her in an intimate, romantic way, but want to keep that to yourself as opposed to letting your wife know about it.
Oh, boy. No, you're all wrong on that front.
Well, we'll forget about the secrets. What do you want to do between now and your death?
Oh, boy.
I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be a while, but say it's not. Say it's October 24th of next year.
Tell you what, I'd want to do one thing for sure, and that's finish well. I'm a Christian man, believer in Christ, and he says we're running a race, and I want to finish the race well.
We're running a race?
Yeah.
I have not been aware of the race. Who am I racing? Who am I racing? I need to know. I've been really laid back in this existence, and it doesn't sound like I should have been. Who's the other guy?
That's an interesting question.
Whenever you think of a race, you're racing against what?
Well, there's three things that are going against us. Our own flesh, the world, and the devil. So we're up against it all the time, and the whole goal is to lock on to Christ's teachings and follow him. And if you make it to the end of your life accomplishing that, I think you finished well. I can send you some scriptures if you want some backup on that.
I think I'm screwed, frankly, because I'm just one of these guys where I was born, then I grew up, and I was working a job, and then I met a girl, and we got married, had some kids, and I got older, and then I'm going to die. I don't know what you call that. I just call that a regular old life. Nothing fancy about it. But I think I might be screwed because I haven't been participating in any race. Don't know about any finish line. I just know that I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. I'm going to die relatively soon in the grand scheme of things. And I will have lived a life that's just sort of, one of those regular lives where you just grow up and you get married, have kids, and you work, and you have some friends, and you die. What's that? Does that get me anything, or I'm out of luck?
I think the Lord has a plan for you. You're a pretty talented guy. You're a good communicator. I just think you need to spend some time studying the Bible. I think you might answer your own questions.
Now, I did grow up in a world where there was a lot of that Christian faith, so I was exposed to a lot of it.
Did it turn you off? Is there people that discouraged you?
I think as I got older and I started to learn about other religions, and soon I came to know that there were 10,000, right now there's 10,000 nameable religions on planet Earth. I started to read about different ones, and boy, everybody was saying different things, and tried to find some common denominators. Love seemed to be in there quite a bit. That made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I kind of hung on to the love thing, but that's probably the main thing I took, and otherwise I kind of let the rest of it go to the wayside. Might have screwed myself over, though. Turns out this love thing may not be enough.
Yeah, there's more to it than that.
So if on October 24th of next year you're out of here, anything in particular you need to get done?
I do. I lost both my parents a few months ago, and it encouraged me to get everything set up and not leave anything for my kids to worry about. So that's what I want to accomplish before October. Got to get all my final arrangements.
You actually talking about buying the plot and all that?
I guess so, yeah.
I know some orderlies in a hospital with shovels who might be able to help you if you're looking to get into grave condition. Hey, I'm going to check in on you October 23rd of next year, okay? Just to see if everything.
I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'll look forward to your call. Thanks for sharing what you do on the podcast. It's very interesting.
You're very welcome. Thanks for talking to me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello. Who's this?
Mischke.
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
Nice to hear from you. Loving the show.
Oh, that's very good to hear. I could tell when you first answered and heard me, you were a little suspicious.
That's right, yeah.
Well, you got to be careful. You can't take every call that comes in. I'm glad you took mine, though. What are you up to today?
Well, I just went to urgent care.
Let me guess. Grave condition.
I'm not on the radio, am I?
Well, we're doing the show.
Oh, no. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. Great visiting with you. You be well.
Love the show. Love, love, love. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello?
Hi, Kelly. Mischke here.
Tommy, how are you?
Doing well. What are you doing today?
Right now, I am hopping in my truck to go get my son from school.
Oh, boy, what a lovely memory that'll be in about 20 years when you're thinking back.
Yeah.
No, it'll be a lovely memory for you. Just those days of driving to pick up your kid. You don't know right now, but it will be. It'll be probably one of the greatest memories you have. You think it'll be something else. You're wrong. It's going to be exactly these little things. What do you do with your life?
Well, I am in education primarily. I also enjoy learning German.
You're in education and enjoy learning German. Okay?
Jawohl.
Jawohl. Translate for me. Du Maria Vollgewanne mit dir! Du bist die Frucht deines Lebens! Wie viel March! Wie viel March! Verstutzen Sie Trehoff bin nicht aus Leben! Yeah, if you're going to talk German, you have to scream it. I mean, there has to be spit coming out of your mouth, even if you're just whispering in your gal's ear. I took a little German in high school. Went to a Catholic high school. Namen des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes. Amen. Gegrüßt seist du, Maria, voller Gnade, Herr ist mit dir. Du bist benedeit, ist die Frucht deines Leibes, Jesus. Just a little Hail Mary.
Well done, Tommy. Nice job.
I'm going to let you go only because this speakerphone thing makes for weird audio. You remember as your son is getting in the vehicle and you're looking at him and you reach over and muss up his hair, you remember that just that alone, that moment, will be what you think about on your deathbed.
Tommy, okay, something I got to tell you how important you are. You saved my life here recently. I'm going through some junk, and you being back on the air has made it all that much better, so somebody else tell you about it.
All right, well, I appreciate you passing that along, and we'll talk again.
Take care, Tommy. Nice talking to you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. It's Mischke calling.
Hi, Mischke. How are you?
I'm swell. What am I catching you doing today?
Playing with some toys with my son and daughter, and we have an electrician here at our house.
I was really hoping you would stop before you said with my son and daughter. I was really hoping it was just going to be playing with some toys. We would have had a field day if you'd have just stopped there. Oh, boy.
This is just my life.
This is your life?
Yeah, the baby is 14 months now.
So you got a 14-month-old there, and what else?
And a 6.5-year-old.
And a 6.5-year-old. Well, it sounds like I've had this conversation with you and your child, really.
And the baby's coming for you.
Really? What's your name?
Josephine.
Josephine?
She likes you.
Hi, little Josephine. Wait till she first sees the Three Stooges.
I'm glad you're back on.
Thank you. I'm glad, too. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Couldn't I talk to the 6-year-old?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to say hi to Billy?
Yeah, Billy.
Hi.
Hey, Billy.
Hi, Mischke.
Hey, Billy. Can I be your new friend?
Yeah?
What do you think it's all about, life? Like the whole thing, the meaning of it all. What do you think?
I don't know.
No idea at all?
Too late.
Too late?
Wow, that's philosophically profound. I'll be thinking about that at 3 a.m. Too late.
Too late?
It's too late to determine the meaning. We're in the midst of it. We're swimming in the water. You can't analyze it now. You just got to live it. That's brilliant. Billy!
Yeah.
Billy, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I got to go.
All right.
All right. For folks who don't know, I've started a practice of asking people to text me their number and if they'd be interested in periodically being given a call. You can text me at 651-321-8949, 651-321-8949. I'm compiling a list, and, it'll probably be a long career. Somewhere in there I'll give you a call and we'll shoot the breeze in the midst of a show, just to break it up. The show needs to have several moving parts to really be a show. There's got to be a few things going on, a few plates in the air spinning in order for it to all feel right. All right. I was sitting on a bus the other day with an old man. He was right next to me. Kindly old man in coveralls with a lunchbox. My car was in the repair shop, which is where it lives. It visits occasionally, mostly every other weekend, kind of like a kid in a divorced family. Anyway, I was sitting on this bus heading to the repair shop, and I didn't know the old man, but he seemed very friendly, and he was very happy. And he and I were sitting next to one another, shooting the breeze, just small talk. And at one point in our conversation, which I believe was a conversation about the weather, he said to me, "There's an old quote that I memorized many years ago." Now, right there, it sounded like this was going to be profound, or at the very least, some truism. But why did I think that at that moment? All that had been said right then was, "There's an old quote I memorized years ago." The old man was about to pass along a quote, and I assumed it was going to be a bit of wisdom. But check this out. He didn't say it was going to be a bit of wisdom. I just assumed it had to be because he was an old man, number one. And number two, he was so happy, so content. And he was saying, "There's an old quote I memorized years ago." A quote, of course, is just something someone said, that's all. And the person that this guy was going to quote, he wasn't being named. There was no real reason for me to believe it was going to be a quote said by anyone with any gravitas, with any more insight than your average floor tile salesman. And yet I was hanging on this old guy's every word, because that's what we've been conditioned to do with old men. Just the fact that it was a quote and then it was memorized from years ago, and some happy, joyful old man was going to pass it along to a younger guy, and I was so ready. And I think now how strange that was, that I was expecting something specific like that. Quote means words that have been spoken. I mean, the words, "Hey, can you tell me where I can find the restroom?" Those are spoken. That's a quote. We could all probably quote someone who has said that. "Hey, can you tell me where I can find the restroom?" I think I've heard that said quite often. I should have said during some of those times, "Hey, mind if I quote you on that?" On what? Oh, those words you just uttered. I want to quote you on that. I want to memorize that quote and remember it. Is that okay? And he might be thinking, my God, if I knew there are people around here who are going to be quoting me, I'd have thought of something better to say than that. "You really want to quote me on that?" And I'd say, "I not only want to, I'm going to. I'm going to quote you on that to all sorts of people in the next few years. Those words are forever attached to you now, fella. That's your quote. It ain't mine. I didn't say it." Anyway, where was I? Oh, the old man. Yeah, the old man was turning toward me in the bus and saying, "There's an old quote I memorized from many years ago." Again, I was ready for it to be insightful, powerful, probably profound. I mean, I think now I could say something, thus making it a quote, and then I could say to someone, "There's a quote I really like that I have memorized," and it would be my own quote, just something I said maybe minutes earlier, and I memorized it. And I could say, listen closely to this quote. I have this memorized. Ready? "The hard wind is the wind that blows when all tears of rage are inured, that's right, by fate's thundering restlessness. And tempting is the offer that rains down in the wintry depths of children's broken dreams on the Sabbath." Now, none of that means anything. None of that means a thing. That's gibberish. I just threw words together there. But I promise you, if I said that quote in a certain crowd, in a somber tone, started it all out by saying, there's an old quote I memorized years ago. I think I could get people to nod afterward and say, powerful, powerful stuff, Mischke, powerful stuff. Anyway, I was ready to nod my head and say, powerful, powerful stuff, old man. And he delivered this quote. He said to me, There's an old quote I memorized years ago, and it goes something like this. The weather always changes. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. And that was it. That was the quote the old man delivered. I was sure it was going to be a quote I would want to remember the rest of my life. But that's all he had for me. And did anyone actually ever say that? I mean, is that an actual quote? I'm sure someone has said something like that. Some guy named Roy, who was talking to his wife while raking leaves in a suburb somewhere. You know, the weather always changes, honey. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. This wise old man in coveralls. So happy. I figured this was going to be related to what brought him so much joy in life. I wanted insight to take with me throughout my day. I wanted a father figure to bestow all he had learned in his long, hard life. And he said the weather changes a lot. Golly, was that a letdown. And I spent the rest of the day thinking about that quote and about quotes in general. I pondered quotes. I realized that I've looked to quotes a lot in life to find wisdom. I started to look up quotes online, the wise ones, the ones we all think of, the ones that are repeated. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Someone was the first to say that. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Knowledge is power. Someone on a certain day was the first to say, knowledge is power. A rolling stone gathers no moss. I would have liked to have been there the first time a guy came up with that. There's no time like the present. Only God can make a tree. Action speaks louder than words. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Those make you think. But now, while these are considered the more intellectually deep, the more profound quotes, are they? Because in my quote research, I came upon something that made me realize those quotes I just rattled off there are as worthless as the quote delivered by the old man, just as useless as his line about weather changing, just as vapid, just as empty. Why? Because I found a page of counter quotes, quotes that said the opposite. Turns out you can find an equally profound quote in every instance, just as well known, just as powerful, just as wise, that says the opposite, that counters, that challenges the other profound quote. Let's look at these quotes again. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Okay, but also, it's never too late to learn. Knowledge is power, you say. Well, ignorance is bliss. A rolling stone gathers no moss? Maybe, but still waters run deep. There's no time like the present. Fair enough, but tomorrow is another day. Only God can make a tree. Well, where there's a will, there's a way. Action speaks louder than words. The pen is mightier than the sword, though. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Well, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. What do any of these quotes matter when the opposite can be said? All of a sudden, I liked the old man's quote a whole lot more. The weather always changes. You don't know what you're going to get. When the quotes are dumb, I think they tend to be more true. Tough to counter the weather changes a lot. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. I think that's a flat-out truism. I don't think you can find an opposing quote. Anyway, I started to think we need to keep quotes simple and stupid. Don't get profound. You get profound, you'll get a wise person to come along and say the opposite, and that too will be profound. Keep it dumb. No one will want to counter it. Say obvious things like, a happy kid is better than one whose legs are being run over by a train. Or, the restroom is down the hall to the left, but you have to get a key from the hostess. Mundane little quotes, sure, but true. No one's countering them. We all ought to take a cue from the old man. Maybe life, in general, is really more for simpletons than any of us want to believe. I have a friend who drives a beer truck for a living. His name is Ted. He's a dim-witted guy, and I don't mean that as a slam. He's very happy, just dim. He never says anything interesting, but so what? He's always smiling, wakes up in the morning and he says, boy, coffee would be good. And when he makes it, he drinks it and actually sets the cup down and says things like, boy, that's great. He's having a good time and it's only 7 a.m. He drives his beer truck all day. He enjoys the sights he sees out the windshield. And when he comes home at night, he says, well, I have some free time now. Think I'll make this the fun part of the day. And he grabs a pair of binoculars and he goes down to the river and he likes to look at coyotes. And when he finds one, he texts all his buddies and he's always so happy. And at night when he goes to sleep, he loves his warm bed and his blankets and his comfortable mattress. He gets in bed and he says, this is great. I know his wife. She tells me this. He's just very, very happy. I'd like to get his book of quotes. I'd like to hear what he has to offer. It's sure neat the way apples don't need to be peeled. They're easier to enjoy than bananas that way. I heard him say that one time when we were on a road trip. Big smile on his face. No one countered it. It's sure neat the way apples don't need to be peeled. Ted may have this whole life thing figured out. Because what beats just being happy and feeling no stress? Very little, that's what. And you can quote me on that. Well, I think that's going to about do it for show number 3. They just keep rolling along, and I'm glad you folks are rolling along with me. I've enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to visiting with you again next week. So long.